More than 3,000 years ago, in the painted tombs of the Valley of the Kings, Egyptian priests set down a vast and detailed map of the world beyond death. They called it the Tuat, or Duat, the hidden kingdom through which the sun god traveled each night between sunset and sunrise. In 1905, the English Egyptologist Sir Ernest Alfred Wallis Budge gathered and translated two of the greatest of these guides, the Book of Am-Tuat and the Book of Gates, in a 3-volume work he titled The Egyptian Heaven and Hell. This deck follows his account of the sun god's night journey, hour by hour, through a realm the ancient Egyptians believed held both a paradise of light and a place of utter destruction. At the heart of these books lies a single powerful idea. Each evening, the sun god Ra was thought to die in the west, and each night his soul sailed in a boat through the 12 hours of the Duat, the darkness beneath the world. There, in the deepest hour, the living sun was believed to unite with Osiris, the god of the dead, so that the two became one and were renewed together. At dawn, Ra emerged in the east, reborn as the scarab Khepri, having carried light, breath, and life to the dwellers in the darkness. What happened to the sun, the Egyptians believed, could happen to every soul. The night journey of Ra was therefore a promise of resurrection, and also a warning, for those who failed the test of the underworld faced not paradise, but annihilation. Before following the sun into the darkness, we meet the scholar who recovered these texts, the strange geography of the night world, and the god whose journey gives the books their shape.
Ernest Alfred Wallis Budge was keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities at the British Museum from 1894 to 1924, and one of the most prolific translators of his age. He published grammars, dictionaries, and editions of nearly every major class of Egyptian religious text, from the Book of the Dead to the books of the underworld. His 3-volume Egyptian Heaven and Hell, issued in 1905, brought together the hieroglyphic texts, line drawings, and English translations of the Book of Am-Tuat and the Book of Gates. Modern scholars often correct his readings and question his theories, yet his volumes remain a doorway through which generations of readers first entered the Egyptian afterlife. He worked from papyri and from the scenes carved and painted on the walls of the royal tombs at Thebes. The Egyptians called the realm of the dead the Tuat, or Duat. It was not a simple pit beneath the earth, but a vast and complicated country, with its own rivers, fields, deserts, walls, and gates. They imagined it as a long valley curving through the body of the sky goddess and beneath the horizon, divided into 12 regions, one for each hour of the night. Some parts were fertile and watered, others were burning sand or pits of fire. Every region had its own gods, its own gatekeepers, and its own dangers. Through the middle of this land ran a great waterway on which the boat of the sun god sailed from the west toward the east. To pass safely, a soul had to know the names of the gods and the gates, and to be declared true of voice before the lords of the Duat. The hero of these books is Ra, the sun god, the greatest power in the Egyptian heavens. By day, he crossed the sky in his boat as a blazing disk. At evening, he sank below the western horizon and entered the Duat. There, the Egyptians pictured him not as the bright daytime sun, but in a hidden nocturnal form, often as a ram-headed god whose body was called the flesh of Ra. This night form was the god's soul, his Ba, journeying through the darkness while his dead body lay at rest in the underworld. As the boat moved from hour to hour, the aged evening sun was gradually renewed, so that the god who entered the west exhausted would rise in the east, young and shining. The whole drama of the books is the nightly death and rebirth of this single, central god. Ra did not travel through the Duat alone or on foot. He sailed in a sacred boat the Egyptians called the Boat of Millions of Years, a vessel that carried the god and his company of attendant deities through the long night. In the daytime sky, this was one boat. In the underworld, it became another, suited to the dark waters of the dead. Around the god stood a crew of deities who steered, who opened the way, and who spoke the words of power that drove back the forces of darkness. In many hours, the water failed or the way grew difficult, and the boat had to be towed by ropes through sand or even through the body of a serpent. The progress of this boat, division by division, is the thread that ties the 12 hours of the books together into one continuous journey.
The first of Budge's two great texts is the Book of Am-Tuat, among the oldest detailed guides to the night world. We now enter its 12 hours, following the boat from the western gate down into the depths. The Book of Am-Tuat takes its name from a phrase meaning that which is in the Tuat, or underworld. It is among the oldest of the great funerary compositions found in the royal tombs of the 18th dynasty, more than 14 centuries before the Common Era. The book is laid out as a series of 12 scenes, one for each hour of the night, and each scene is usually divided into 3 horizontal registers, like 3 lanes running side by side. The middle register holds the water on which the sun god sails. The upper and lower registers are filled with the gods, the blessed, and the damned who dwell in that hour. Names labeled nearly every figure, for the book was meant to be useful knowledge. To know the contents of the Am-Tuat was to know the secret geography of the world to come. As the sun sets, the boat of Ra reaches the western mountain and passes through a great gateway into the first hour of the night. This first division is a kind of vestibule, a borderland between the world of the living and the deep Duat beyond. Here, the god is greeted by the dwellers of the threshold, by baboons who announce the sun, and by goddesses who guard the way. The land of this hour is still wide, and crowds of beings come to hail the god as his light reaches them. Already, the boat has changed its character, taking on the form proper to the underworld. The Egyptians marked this opening hour as the moment when the sun, having died to the world above, begins its passage through the hidden kingdom, bringing the first faint glimmer of light to those who wait in darkness. In the second and third hours, the boat sails through a well-watered, fruitful region. The Egyptians gave these divisions names like Wernes and the waters of Osiris, and pictured them as a kind of countryside of the dead, with fields, canals, and standing grain. Here, the sun god is accompanied by other boats carrying gods and sacred emblems, a small fleet moving together through the night. The god speaks to the beings of each hour, allotting them their fields and their offerings, and the dwellers there receive light and air as the boat passes. These early hours are relatively gentle, a green and flowing landscape before the harder, drier regions ahead. They show that the Duat was not imagined as wholly terrible, but as a land where the just could be fed and could flourish under the passing light of the sun. At the fourth hour, the green country gives way to a strange and difficult region, the land of the hawk-headed god Seker, lord of the Memphite underworld. This is a place of sand and darkness, cut off from the water on which the boat has sailed. The waterway breaks up into a zigzag path crowded with serpents, some winged, some with many heads and legs, the guardians of this hidden ground. Because there is no river here, the boat of the sun can no longer float. It is changed into a serpent boat
and must be towed across the sand by the gods. The light of Ra grows faint in this sealed-off land, and the god calls out to its dwellers, who hear his voice but can scarcely see him. The fourth hour marks the descent into the most secret and forbidding part of the whole Duat.
The fifth hour lies at the very center of the Book of Am-Tuat, and it holds its most mysterious scene. Over this hour rises a great mound or pyramid of sand, and beneath it, hidden from all sight, lies the body of the god Seker, guarded by a coiled serpent and by the head of a goddess. At the apex of the mound perches a watchful bird. Above it, gods strain to drag the boat across the sealed land. Below, in the lowest register, burns the lake of fire of the Tuat, whose waters are flames to the wicked, but cool and refreshing to the blessed. This hour gathers the great themes of the whole book: the buried, secret corpse from which new life will spring, and the double nature of the underworld's fire, which destroys the damned, yet comforts the just. It is the deep, still heart of the night.
In the middle hours, the journey reaches its crisis. The dead sun is joined to its own soul. A great serpent rises to halt the boat, and at last, the god is born again into the morning sky.
The sixth hour, at the deepest point of the night, holds the secret on which the whole book turns. Here, in the waters of the primeval deep, the soul of the sun god descends to its own dead body, and the living Ra is united with Osiris, the motionless lord of the dead. For a single moment, the god who moves and the god who lies still become one, and from that union flows the power that will renew the sun, and with it all the dead of the Duat. The Egyptians guarded this idea as a profound mystery, that life and death, the day sun and the buried Osiris, were two faces of one divine reality. A many-headed serpent watches over the scene, and the corpse of the god rests at its very center. From this midnight meeting, the long climb back toward the dawn begins.
The renewed god is not allowed to rise unopposed. In the seventh hour, the boat meets its great enemy, the monstrous serpent Apep, the embodiment of chaos and darkness, who tries to halt the sun forever by swallowing the water of the Duat so the boat cannot toss. Around the god gather his defenders. The goddess Isis and the god Set stand in the boat, working words of power, while the scorpion goddess Serket and others bind and pierce the serpent. Knives are driven into Apep's coils, his power is checked, and the way is opened once more. This nightly battle, the Egyptians believed, was renewed at every sunrise, when light again defeated darkness. The danger here is not punishment, but pure obstruction, the cosmic threat that the sun might fail and the ordered world dissolve back into the void.
Beyond the battle, in the 8th and 9th hours, the boat passes through divisions filled with gods seated in their shrines and circles. The 8th hour is divided into a series of enclosures, each holding a company of deities, and the god calls to them so that they may breathe and receive their offerings of cloth and bread. In the 9th hour, a crew of 12 divine sailors takes up the towing ropes to drive the boat forward, and bearers of a great serpent give light to the way. These hours are crowded with names and figures, for the Egyptians believed the dweller in the next world must recognize each god and each region in turn. The careful labeling shows the purpose of the whole book. It is a guide meant to equip the soul with the exact knowledge needed to journey safely through the hidden land. As the night nears its end, the 10th and 11th hours fill with images of renewal and of judgment side by side. In the 10th hour, the powers of the deep water work to restore the drowned and to ready the sun's body for its rising, while armed goddesses guard the way. The 11th hour quickens with preparation for the dawn. Stars and the symbols of time appear, and the eastern gate draws near. But here too stand the pits of fire, deep hollows in which goddesses and fire-breathing serpents destroy the enemies of the god. The damned are shown bound and cast head down into the flames, cut off forever from the light. Thus the closing hours hold both fates together, the regeneration awaiting the blessed, and the burning destruction reserved for those condemned in the kingdom of the dead. In the 12th and final hour, the long journey reaches its triumph. The boat is towed into the tail of an enormous serpent named Divine Life and drawn through its body from tail to mouth. As it passes through, the aged sun god is wholly renewed, and at the serpent's mouth, he emerges transformed, reborn as Khepri, the scarab of the morning, who is lifted up into the easterly sky. The day begins again, and the world above is flooded with light. Yet Osiris and the dead remain behind in the Duat, for the night will return, and the journey will be made anew. The Egyptians found in this ending their deepest hope, that as surely as the sun conquered the darkness each night and rose again, so the justified dead might share in that victory and live forever in the light.
Budge's second text retells the night journey in a new form. Now each hour is shut behind a fortified gate, kept by a serpent and by guardian gods, whose names the soul must know in order to pass.
The Book of Gates covers the same 12 hours of the night, but it organizes the Duat in a different way. Between each division stands a massive fortified gate, a corridor of high walls guarded by a fire-breathing serpent and by divine doorkeepers. To move from one hour to the next, the sun god and the soul who follows him must approach each gate and be admitted by name. This book appears somewhat later than the Am-Tuat, in the royal tombs of the 19th and 20th dynasties, and one of its finest copies covers the great alabaster sarcophagus of King Seti I. Where the Am-Tuat dwells on the geography of each region, the Book of Gates lays its stress on the barriers between them and on the constant testing of every soul who would pass through the kingdom of the dead.
Each gate in the book is a scene in itself. The passage is flanked by walls topped with fire, and along its length stands a giant upright serpent who guards the entrance. Before and beyond the gate wait divine doorkeepers, often shown as seated gods or as mummified figures, each bearing a name that must be spoken aloud. The Egyptians believed that knowledge was the key to the underworld. To name the serpent and the keepers correctly was to compel the gate to open. The texts beside each portal record these names and the words the traveler must say. In this way, the Book of Gates turns the night journey into a sequence of thresholds, and salvation depends not on force, but on sacred knowledge, on possessing the right words at each and every guarded door.
Near the middle of the Book of Gates, the night journey opens onto its most solemn scene, the Hall of Judgment of Osiris. The god of the dead sits enthroned at the top of a flight of steps, and before him stands a great balance, the scales on which the deeds of the dead are weighed. The blessed, found just, are welcomed, the wicked are turned away to destruction. In related texts, the heart of the dead is set against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and right order, and only the soul whose heart does not betray it is declared true of voice. This judgment is the moral center of the whole afterlife. The Egyptians believed that no rank or wealth could save a person here, and that each soul stood at last alone before the Lord of the dead, answerable for the life it had lived.
The Book of Gates does not show the same fate for all. In one famous scene, the god surveys the races of mankind known to the Egyptians, gathered together as the creatures of his eye. Elsewhere, the book divides the dead sharply in two. The blessed stand in good order, granted fields, bread, and light, rejoicing in the presence of the god as he passes among them. The condemned, by contrast, the enemies of Ra and of Osiris, are shown bound, blindfolded, and driven toward punishment, while fire-breathing serpents wait to consume them. Here, the title Budge gave his work, The Egyptian Heaven and Hell, finds its clearest justification. Two destinies, and only two, await the soul that comes before the gods: to dwell in light among the justified, or to be cast out into the place of destruction.
As in the Book of Am-Tuat, the great serpent of chaos must be overcome. In the Book of Gates, the enemy Apep appears in the later hours, bound and held fast by the gods, so that the sun may pass. In one striking scene, a long serpent is pinned to the ground by chains held by a whole row of deities, each gripping the bond that restrains the monster. Elsewhere, the coils are pierced with knives, or the enemies of the god are shown roped together by the neck and led to their doom. The message is constant. The forces that threaten the order of the world are real and powerful, yet they can be mastered. Night after night, the gods subdue chaos so that the light may return. The binding of the serpent assured the Egyptians that the cosmos was secure, and that the rising of the sun was not an accident, but a hard-won victory.
Beyond the gates and the judgment lay the reward of the justified, a kingdom ruled by Osiris, where the blessed dead lived on in fields of plenty, fed with bread and bathed in light. Standing over the whole Egyptian heaven is Osiris, the god who had himself died and risen. In the myth, he was a king murdered by his brother, his body broken and scattered, then gathered and restored by his wife Isis and granted new life as ruler of the dead. Because Osiris had conquered death, the Egyptians believed that every justified soul could be joined to him and share in his victory. In the funerary texts, the dead person is even called by his name, becoming an Osiris in the world below. He presides over the judgment, receives the blessed into his kingdom, and guarantees that death is not the end. The resurrection of Osiris, mirrored each night in the rebirth of the sun, lay at the very root of Egyptian hope. To enter his fields was to live again, secure under the rule of the god who had returned from death. The paradise of the Egyptians was the field of reeds, called Seket Aru, and the neighboring field of offerings. It was imagined as an idealized Egypt, a land of broad waters and rich fields where the grain grew tall and the harvests never failed. There the blessed dead plowed, sowed, and reaped beside flowing canals, dwelling in peace under a sky ruled by the gods. Because even paradise required labor in the fields, the Egyptians placed small servant figures, the shoptis, in their tombs to do this work in the owner's place. The field of reeds was not a realm of idle rest, but a perfected version of the life the living had known and loved, the Nile Valley made whole, freed from hunger, sickness, and death. To reach it was the hope of every Egyptian who prepared for the long journey through the Duat. Not every soul reached the field of reeds. Admission belonged to those declared makiru, a phrase Budge renders as true of voice or justified, the verdict given to a soul whose heart had passed the test of the balance. To be true of voice was to have lived in accordance with Mot, the order of truth and justice, and to have answered rightly before the gods of the hall. Such a soul was no longer a helpless shade, but a transfigured spirit, an Ak, able to move freely, to take on any form, and to join the followers of Osiris and the crew of the sun. The Egyptians prepared all their lives for this verdict, learning the names and the words the journey required. The reward of a just life was not merely survival, but transformation, to become a being of light dwelling among the gods. What did the blessed dead actually receive? Above all, the texts promise the simple necessities that death had taken away. As the boat of the sun passed through each hour, the god granted to the just their offerings of bread and beer, the breath of air to breathe, cool water to drink, and the light of his face shining upon them. To the dwellers in the darkness, even a brief moment of the sun's light was a gift of life, and they cried out with joy as the boat drew near. These gifts reveal what the Egyptians most feared in death: hunger, thirst, suffocation, and unending darkness. Heaven, in their vision, was the undoing of those fears, a place where the dead would never again want for food, for breath, for water, or for light, but would share in the abundance of the living God. Against the fields of the blessed, the books set their opposite, a place of fire and knives, where the enemies of the gods were bound, tormented, and at last destroyed, suffering the dreaded second death.
The Egyptian hell was reserved for the enemies of Ra and of Osiris, a category that included the chaos-serpent and his allies, the rebels against the divine order, and the human dead found guilty before the balance. The texts call them the damned, the fallen, those who are condemned. They are shown stripped of their power, often bound with their arms tied behind them, sometimes headless, sometimes with their hearts torn out. They have failed the test of the Duat, and so they are handed over to the keepers of the pits. The Egyptians did not imagine these punishments as cruelty for its own sake, but as the just removal of those who had set themselves against truth and order. To be numbered among the enemies of the gods was the worst of all fates, and it was the destiny the funerary texts were written to help the dead escape. The punishments of the Egyptian underworld are described in vivid and terrible detail. The condemned are cast into deep pits and lakes of fire, whose flames are stirred by goddesses and by serpents that spit fire from their mouths. Demon executioners, knife in hand, stand ready to cut, to bind, and to burn the enemies of the gods. Some of the damned are hung head downward, some are bound fast to stakes, some are boiled in cauldrons or beheaded by the slaughterers of the Duat. These guardians bear fearsome names and dreadful faces, and the texts warn the traveler to know them and to declare his innocence before them. The scenes are not meant as idle horror, but as the dark mirror of the fields of the blessed, a vivid warning of what awaited the soul that came before the gods condemned. The deepest dread of the Egyptian was not eternal torture, but final annihilation, what the texts call the second death. To die once was the common lot of all. To die a second time in the underworld was to be utterly destroyed, blotted out of existence forever. The fire of the pits did not only punish, it consumed. The enemies of the god were beheaded, their bodies burned, their souls and shadows, and even their names annihilated, so that nothing of them remained to live again. For a people who believed that survival depended on the preservation of the body and the name, this was the ultimate horror: to be cut off from light, breath, and memory, and simply to cease to be. The Egyptian hell, then, was less a realm of endless suffering than a place of total unmaking, the absolute opposite of the eternal life the blessed enjoyed.
The dark regions of the Duat swarmed with guardian beings, and not all of them were gentle. Alongside the gods who helped the sun stood grim keepers of the gates and pits, shown with the heads of serpents, crocodiles, or beasts, and bearing knives or great keys. Some were said to live on the blood or the cries of the damned. Some swallowed shadows. Some kept watch over the cauldron. The funerary texts list their names and forms in careful detail, because the soul that knew them could name them and pass by unharmed, while the soul that did not might be seized and destroyed. These guardians stood at the boundary between the two eternities, the servants of order who carried out the sentence of the gods, ushering the blessed onward and dragging the condemned away to their doom.
Finally, we ask what these books were for, where they were written, how a vision once reserved for kings spread to all, and why Budge's translations still matter today.
These books of the underworld were not private papyri alone. Their grandest forms were carved and painted on the walls of the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings at Thebes. There, in the deep rock-cut chambers and corridors, the hours of the night unfold around the dead pharaoh, so that the king might journey with the sun god through the whole Duat and rise again with him at dawn. The Book of Am-Tuat covers the walls of tombs such as that of Thutmose III. The Book of Gates adorns the tombs of the Ramesside kings and the great sarcophagus of Seti I. The tomb itself became a working model of the night world, and the buried king its traveler. It is from these painted walls, as much as from any papyrus, that Budge drew the texts and pictures of his volumes.
In the earliest times, the fullest hope of the afterlife had belonged to the king alone, who joined the gods in the sky. Over the centuries, that hope steadily widened. The texts and pictures of the underworld, once reserved for royalty, spread first to nobles and high officials, and at last, in simpler forms, to ordinary men and women, who carried versions of these guides into their own graves. The same journey through the Duat, the same judgment before Osiris, and the same fields of the blessed came to be the inheritance of any Egyptian who could prepare for them. This gradual opening of the next world to all is one of the great themes of Egyptian religion. By the time of Budge's texts, the road through the night was no longer a royal privilege, but a shared human hope, a promise of life beyond death offered to the whole people. Why do these ancient guides to the dark still hold us? In part, because they preserve one of the oldest and most detailed visions of life beyond death that any people has left behind, a fully imagined other world with its own geography, gods, and laws. In part, because their central images, the dying and rising sun, the weighing of the heart, the fields of the blessed, and the lakes of fire, would echo through later religions and through the whole history of how human beings have pictured heaven and hell. Budge's volumes, for all that later scholars have revised them, opened these texts to readers who could not read a line of hieroglyphs and gave them an enduring English name. Through his Egyptian heaven and hell, the night journey of the sun god still carries its ancient promise that out of the deepest darkness, light and life can be born again.
We have followed the sun god Ra from the western gate through the fertile early hours and the sealed desert of Sekher, down to the midnight union with Osiris, the battle with the serpent Apep, and the long climb to rebirth as the scarab of the dawn. We have passed through the 12 gates of the second book, stood before the great scales of judgment, and seen the two eternities the Egyptians set side by side, the fields of the blessed, bright with bread and water and light, and the pits of fire where the condemned met the second death. In these ancient books, recovered for us by Wallis Budge, a people 3,000 years gone wrote down their hope that death was not the end. If this journey through the Duat moved you, please subscribe, like, and share so that more of these old voices may reach the light. Until next time, keep seeking the wisdom of the ancient world.